Hello Year 7. You're going to be making cheesy herb bread, which is a bit like a savoury scone, and you'll have a recipe like this to follow. Today I'm going to talk you through the steps of the recipe, exactly as it appears on the recipe card, okay? To start off with, you'll need to make sure your oven is preheated. Now, if it's electric, it will be 200 degrees C or gas mark 6. That's step 1. Step 2 is to line the baking sheet with grease-proof paper. So in your cupboard, you've got oven baking trays and a piece of paper to go on the tray to stop your cheesy herb bread from sticking on the tray, okay? The next step is 1 egg. You're going to beat it in a small bowl using a fork. I'm just using a little bowl, but you've got some small plastic bowls in your cupboards. You can tap on the edge or on the table. Just make sure that you haven't got any shell in your egg, nice and clean. You can actually compost the shell. So using a fork, you beat the egg. On your recipe card, it says to count of 20, just to give you an idea of how long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Just to give you an idea, it doesn't have to be any longer than that. So that's the egg beaten. In a measuring jug, I have measured 50 millilitres of milk. It's only quite a small amount. It's basically just over 2 tablespoons. So it's not a lot of milk. So you'll need to have that ready as well. So that's the egg and the milk. Those are our wet ingredients. Now, in a mixing bowl, you will put in 150 grams of self-raising flour. Now, this is the type of flour used in cake making that has got a raising agent already in it. 150 grams into your bowl. Make sure you have clean hands, obviously, because we're going to be using our hands for this part. So make sure at the beginning of the lesson you've got your hair up, your apron on, and your hands are washed, okay? Into the flour, I'm adding some butter or margarine, 50 grams. So 50 grams goes in to the 150 grams of flour. Okay, if it's in a big block, you can just chop it up into smaller pieces. And you are then going to get your clean hands in, and you are going to do what's called the rubbing in method, where you rub the fat, so the butter or margarine, into the flour. And it should look like breadcrumbs. So a lot of recipes will say until it resembles fine breadcrumbs. Using your fingertips, because they are cooler than the palm of your hand, you don't want to kind of melt the fat and make it greasy. It should remain light and crumbling. And you can kind of lift it up a bit to get more air into the mixture too. This will take longer if your butter has come out of the fridge and it's firmer. If it's slightly softer, it will happen quicker. Does that make sense? So do that until you've got no big lumps of butter left and it resembles breadcrumbs. This is called the rubbing in method, and it's the same process used in pastry making, crumble topping, shortbread. When I say pastry, short crust pastry. And the result is a crumbly texture. The food science is called shortening. Shortening. Okay. It will look, can you see that? Literally like a dry crumb. At this point, I would give your hands a wash before you move on to the next stage. Okay, so you're now on to the next side of the recipe card. So step 5, add the cheese, salt, pepper and herbs. The quantity of cheese is 75 grams. If you can bring it in ready grated, that would be helpful. We do obviously have graters in school, but if you could bring it in ready grated and the right amount, 75 grams. I'm just going to show you how to do the grating. So you've got your piece of cheese, that's 75 grams, just to give you an idea of how big it is. This is called a box grater. We use this side here, and you can hold it flat or at an angle, whatever's more comfortable, and you just grate along that side of the grater, making sure that your fingers and your knuckles are safely out of the way of the sharp blades, okay? This is going to add a lovely savoury flavour to your cheesy herb bread. Just be careful when you get to that last little bit, because you don't want to catch your fingers. So that's what 75 grams of grated cheese looks like. As I said, if you can bring it in ready grated, it will just help save some time in the lesson. So we're going to add the cheese into the crummy flour mixture. So in it goes. Salt and pepper we have in school for seasoning. Now, just be careful because in school it comes out quite fast. I always just put it into my hand, a good pinch. Not too much because your cheese will have saltiness to it. I've got a pepper mill. I'm working at home. So a nice bit of pepper and herbs. Now you can add, it says on your recipe, half a teaspoon of herbs. These can be fresh or dried, and it can be your choice, something that you think will go well with the cheesiness. So I had a look in my garden and I found some fresh herbs, which have a lovely kind of oniony flavour, plus nice bright green, give a bit of colour as well. So I'm just going to prepare those, make sure they're clean, and you can use scissors to snip or a sharp knife. I think with chives it's often easier to use scissors, so I'll just go and grab some. So fresh or dried, you could use parsley, rosemary, chives, whatever you fancy. So I'm just doing quite little pieces using scissors, it's ever so easy. Snipping the end until I think I've got about half a teaspoon or so, probably about there, maybe a bit more. Okay, those can now go in the mixing bowl with the cheese, and I've done the salt and pepper. So really that is all my dry ingredients in the bowl. Okay, looks like that. Next step was to add the egg, all of the egg. So I'll just move that out of the way. So remember the egg that we've beaten in the little bowl. All of that can go in. And mix it with, you can use a table knife or a spoon. Give that a good mix. That's step 6. It says add all of the beaten egg and mix with a metal spoon. Step 7, add some but not all of the milk, and just do it a spoonful at a time, or a little bit at a time, and mix. What you're looking for is a soft dough but not sticky. So you may not need all of this. You'll be leaving a little bit to glaze, and I'll explain that in a moment. So you can use your spoon, or you can just carefully trickle a little bit in. use the spoon to mix it. So remember, it should come together to form a dough, but it shouldn't be like really sticky and too wet. It should be just a good dough that holds its shape. So I need a little bit more milk. So remember, that's important that you don't add all of that 100 mils of milk. And I'm sort of using the back of my spoon to help incorporate the liquid into the dry ingredients. It's looking a bit like that now. Can you see how it's kind of coming together? It's clumping together to make a dough. And I think that's probably enough milk. Okay. Next step is to remove the dough from the bowl and knead it gently until it's just combined into a ball. Do not overwork or over-handle the dough. And you will need to use a flour dredger to dust the worktop so that the dough doesn't stick. So I'm just going to get a little bit of flour to do that. Okay, I've dusted the worktop with some flour. I've turned out the dough. And remember, the recipe says to just kind of knead it gently, basically bringing it together into a ball. It should pretty much be there anyway, something like that. What you're going to do is flatten it until it's about 4 centimetres thick. So kind of imagine what that's going to look like in terms of thickness. If it's too thick, it will take too long to cook. So you're kind of squashing it down. Use just your hand to press it down, and till you're happy, you can kind of go around and reshape the edges a little bit. I think that's about the right thickness. Okay. Then get your baking tray that's lined with some paper and lift it carefully onto there. I'll just get rid of that flour for the moment. So make sure you're keeping your work area nice and clean and tidy. Using a palette knife, which is the round bladed knife like this one, flexible knife, you're going to mark it out into 6. So if you score across the middle, sort of halfway into the dough, and then each side into thirds, if you can imagine what that looks like. So you end up with 6 kind of portions, a bit like that. Okay, can you see that? Oops. So we've got 6 pieces that I've marked out with the edge of the palette knife. Now, we are now going to glaze it with the egg and milk. So any remaining, in my bowl, I've got a tiny bit of egg left. I'm going to add that little tiny bit of spare milk. So I'm just using up what I've got here. I'll use a pastry brush, bear with me while I get one. So a pastry brush, and you are going to paint the glaze over the dough. And the purpose of the glaze is to help on baking, help to give a lovely golden brown finish. So this is what we call a finishing technique, using a glaze. And here we're using a little bit of remaining egg and milk. You could use just egg, you could use just milk. Sometimes it's called an egg wash. So cover it over. You won't need all of it, so just make sure it's got a thin coating. Now it's ready to go into the oven. Baking time 15 to 20 minutes. So you've just got to kind of keep an eye. What you need to make sure is that it's cooked in the middle, and your oven's preheated. So it should be, I would say check 15, but it might need 20. It will rise because of the raising agent in the flour. So it should kind of grow a bit, and it should have a lovely golden brown colour. And if you look on your recipe card, you'll see how it looks at the end. So it's kind of portioned into lovely triangles, and you would serve this. It would be lovely with some soup or with some butter. It's a bit like a scone, a savoury scone. So I'll put it in the oven, and then we'll have a look at what it looks like when it's baked. After 20 minutes, this is what it should look like. You can see it's risen, it's golden brown, and it's very hot. So make sure you use your oven gloves and you get your bread out very carefully and put it on the hob top. Don't try and handle it straight away, it will need to cool. And it may appear inside that there's a bit of moisture, but that is where the cheese is melted, and it will just cool down a little bit before you can eat it. And this can be served warm or cold, and that's it really. So just look at the colour. This is the kind of colour that you're aiming for. See, it's lovely golden brown, and where the cheese has come through, you can see, and you can see the chives inside, so a bit of green for the chives. And the markings of the 6 means that you can easily divide this into 6 portions. Good luck with your baking!